Hi guys, I'm Diaz and you're watching the SUV Battle channel, and this is the Clash of the Titans, America versus Europe.
We have the Jeep Grand Cherokee, Cadillac Escalade, and Hummer H2 versus G-Wagon, Range Rover Sport, Defender, and the long wheelbase Range Rover. We will find out who is who on a rocky turn where just yesterday we filmed the battle of the mid-size SUVs. The restyled Pajero Sport 3, Chevrolet Trailblazer, Haval H9, Russian UAZ Patriot, and others. All of this will be shown in the following video. Therefore, subscribe to the channel and do not forget to hit the bell so that you don't miss this epic battle. Now, back to our Titans. Given the obstacle's difficulty, all participants will drive with low range and activate the off-road assistance when necessary. The 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT starts first. Its naturally aspirated 6.4-liter V8 produces 470 horsepower. Let's see how this power reserve can help the Jeep pass the test course. But what will affect the result is the body kit under the front bumper and door steps, which made the low ground clearance even less. Of course, the car owner is well aware of this, but he decided to test the capabilities of the Jeep on this climb anyway. The SRT version of the Grand Cherokee doesn't have a low range and off-road driving mode. There are only track, auto, snow, tow, and sports modes. We will choose the sport. I understand your anger about the skipping of the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk for this test, but I was not able to find such a car. Luckily, the owner of a Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT replied to the call for participation, and it was entirely his decision. The Jeep has to skid a lot to reach the first stopping point. But despite this, the Grand Cherokee drives forward even on three wheels, reaching the next point. The small front wheel travel is clearly visible. That's not surprising at all because this car was created for absolutely opposite conditions. Slight wheel spin and the Jeep moves higher. An attempt to change the line was unsuccessful. Limited ground clearance and an unsophisticated traction control system that allows excessive wheel spin can lead to a sharp jump forward with subsequent damage to the body kit. Therefore, a rollback without driving along a more direct line since the Jeep was already taking the easiest one. The next participant is the fourth generation Cadillac Escalade with a 6.2 gasoline V8 under the hood. The off-road arsenal presents a low range and a self-locking differential in the rear axle. The driver holds the revs at the first diagonal suspension, and it is visible how the traction control works. Idle wheel spin is minimal. The Cadillac skids a little longer at the next spot, where the rear left wheel stretched to maximum travel and drove forward after the engine was revved up. The moment of activation of the rear self-locking diff is clearly audible, followed by the rear wheel's characteristic or typical drift. The Ford Raptor with locked rear differential behaved the same way in the same place in the video Clash of the Titans 2. The link to the video is in the description or right now in the upper right corner. The reason for such a behavior is the front left wheel, which presses against the hill and creates an anchor effect. But the Cadillac copes with this challenge and reaches the next stopping point, showing the articulation range of its front wheel. The throttling is as smooth as possible, and the Escalade moves forward just as smoothly, even on three wheels. We make a stop after reaching the final diagonal suspension. slight slippage until the limited slip differential engages, and then an instant push forward. What an excellent result, considering that no one expects a miracle from the Escalade off-road. The next contestant is the 2021 Range Rover Sport with a 3-liter gasoline engine and no off-road arsenal of any kind. There is no low range, no off-road driving modes, and no rear locking differential. But there is an air suspension lifted to the upper position. Let's go. The traction control system reacted immediately when the car reached the first diagonal. Then, the Range Rover drove forward without idle wheel spin as the revs increased. Stopping with the rear left wheel hanging and confident forward movement when the gas pedal was pressed. And now, a demonstration of the front wheel articulation range and minimal slip when driving again. It looked impressive. The Range Rover Sport stopped on a diagonal suspension and then drove on with just a little more revs. The final spot, and the car is on 3 wheels. But even here, there are no problems. The traction control system shows maximum efficiency despite the absence of off-road assistance. The next participant is the 2020 long wheel-based Range Rover with a supercharged V8. I already have a video on the channel with this car on the same hill. That time, it drove in normal mode and in rock crawl mode in low range. I will leave the link in the description for those who are interested. To not repeat ourselves, we activate the low range and select the auto mode of the terrain response system this time. Let me remind you that this Range Rover is equipped with a central locking differential only. The air suspension is raised to the top position. Due to the long wheelbase and better articulation than the Range Rover Sport, the big range passes this section without a hint of slipping and lifting the front wheel off the ground. The rear wheel is hanging, but the car's behavior is still absolutely predictable. The Range Rover slips a little with low speed and confidently drives to the next stopping point. Now with the front left wheel in the air. By the way, the front wheel articulation is also better than that of the Range Rover Sport. The driver throttled, and after barely noticeable wheel spin, the large Range Rover drives forward on 3 wheels. It was necessary to make a complete stop at this place, but on the other hand, given the way the Range Rover handled more challenging obstacles, we would not see anything new. The final diagonal was also left without attention since, due to the length of the wheelbase and the articulation, the Range Rover did not even hang out here. Next participant. And the next one is the 2021 Mercedes G63 with a 4-liter turbocharged gasoline V8. The exact same car was in the previous Clash of the Titans, but it drove this hill in the normal drive mode. And today, we will add the low range. There is a slight slip on the approach to the main obstacle. And then, watch how the front left wheel jerks during the traction control system. But this is not the only thing that will surprise you. Impressive wheel spin to push forward. Caught on 3 wheels and with the front left one raised high, the G-Wagon again needs some time for the traction control system to figure out what to do. Roughly, the same thing happens on the diagonal, almost at the finish line. Not the best result, especially compared to the Range Rover. But, foreshadowing the anger of the legendary German SUV fans, now there will be another drive but in full combat mode. The central, rear, and front lockers are activated, plus the gearbox is in the low range. Previously, the G-Wagon skidded in this place, and now there is not even a hint of it. The car is driving so confidently that the driver does not even notice the hanging of the rear wheel. Therefore, we roll back to position the Mercedes on 3 wheels and then continue driving. Look how deep the rear right wheel goes into the arch. Maximally smooth throttling, and the G-Wagon quickly drives forward despite high-speed road tires, stopping at the next spot with the front left wheel in the air. Indeed, there was no problem with continuing driving. The driver deliberately steps on the gas as delicately as possible. Again, not noticing another obstacle, the G-Wagon rolls back to stop on the diagonal where all the previous participants slipped. But 3 honest mechanical lockers works wonders. The Mercedes drives easily and casually. Let me remind you that the G-Wagon is on high-speed road tires, a thorn in the side of those trying to justify a contestant car's failure by the difference of tires, especially when it comes to tires of the same season, but from different manufacturers. This drive is a vivid example of how the car drives perfectly on tires unsuitable for these conditions due to technical capabilities. The next participant is a 2020 Land Rover Defender with a 3-liter gasoline turbo engine. This car has electronically controlled central and rear locking differentials. You can watch how Defender drives this climb in normal drive mode in the Clash of the Titans 2 video using the link in the description. This time, the Land Rover will go in the low range and terrain response system in auto mode. In this mode, the center diff is locked immediately, and the rear locker will be engaged automatically when necessary, without the driver's participation. In addition, the air suspension is raised to the top position. The first diagonal is passed by a move with a slight hint of wheel spin, but it was noticeable how quickly the traction control system reacted, clamping the wheel in the air. Full stop on the first obstacle demonstrates the rear wheel articulation range, a precise gas pedaling, and the suspended wheel does not even have time to make a half a turn when the traction control system in tandem with the rear locker engages. As a result, the Defender confidently pushes forward to the next point. The driver throttles, and a great result again. Instant work of the electronic system, even quicker than the big Range Rover. Because of the all-wheel drive's outstanding work, the driver does not notice any difficulties in overcoming the final diagonal. That's why we roll back to stop the Defender right on the obstacle. How could it be otherwise? With almost no slipping, driving as smoothly as possible, and without high revs, the Defender completed the conquest of this hill. But it was just in automatic mode of the terrain response system. Let's watch the Defender's attempt in rock crawl mode, in which the rear differential is locked preventively. The Defender briefly blocked the suspended wheel on the first diagonal during the previous run. It drove this spot at a lower speed with all the wheels rotating simultaneously. The car crawled through the first point without any difficulties and stopped at the second obstacle with the front left wheel lifted. Gas supply and not much difference in behavior from the automatic mode, Defender easily continued his ascent, stopping at the final diagonal from which, of course, no problems arise either. The Land Rover stops on 3 wheels, easily starts driving again, and safely completes the drive. I don't exclude that skeptics will write that this is a Land Rover ad and everything is set up, but you saw what the Defender was doing. Now, let's move on to the heavy artillery. The massive Hummer H2 with the mighty 6-liter gasoline V8. Don't be surprised by its winter tires. The summer tires were on their way and hadn't arrived by the time of shooting this video. The Hummer has a low range and rear locker for off-road. So, let's start with the low range. The Hummer does not even notice the first diagonal due to the size of the wheels and suspension articulation, and reaches the main obstacle. The suspended wheels are skidding due to the absence of the traction control system, and the SUV stands still. Let's lock the rear differential. Quite another matter. But when the front right wheel went up in the air and the front left one works as an anchor, the Hummer digs holes with the rear wheels and cannot drive further. The H2 rolls back a little and tries to conquer the obstacle, holding the gas pedal a little longer. Without the rear locker, the Hummer would have stalled in this place, scattering the ground with unloaded wheels. But with the locker, the H2 confidently drives with a minor spin of 3 wheels. There are no problems at all at the final diagonal, thanks to the size and travel of the wheels. And now, as a bonus, a freestyle drive from the Hummer.
It was very impressive, a bright end to the series of races, and it's time to take stock.
The outsider of this test is the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT. Surprisingly, its creators were so carried away by improving the acceleration dynamics that they completely forgot about driving on rough terrain, depriving the car of a low range and off-road mode. The 4th place goes to the Hummer H2. It has a powerful engine, big wheels, a rear locker, and no traction control. And this means that under certain conditions, when one front wheel is anchored and the other is helplessly skidding in the air, the 2 rear wheels may not have enough grip or soil density to ensure forward movement. I don't consider the option of passing the obstacle using momentum, yet this is an entirely different topic. The 3rd place is awarded to the Cadillac Escalade. It has what the Hummer lacks: traction control. Thanks to it, the Escalade drove out of this position. It's visible how the suspended wheel is braking, and the loaded front left one receives more torque and pulls the car up the hill. For comparison, this is how the hanging front wheel of the Hummer rotates in the same spot. The Cadillac has a rear locker, which also affects its ability to overcome obstacles. In 2nd place is the Mercedes G63 and the long wheelbase Range Rover. However, the G-Wagon did not rank 1st because its all-wheel drive is most effective only when all 3 lockers are activated, and one still needs to know how to use them correctly. So, if we talk about the capabilities of the Mercedes in general, then yes, the G-Wagon is very cool. But if to look precisely at the work of the all-wheel drive, then without mechanical lockers, the G-Wagon is not the best in this test. But the long wheelbase Range Rover, equipped only with a central locking diff, showed an excellent result. Moreover, it drove in the low range, just slightly worse than the G-Wagon with all three differentials locked, while not requiring the driver to have special knowledge to use the off-road potential. But despite this, the Range Rover also occupies second place just because there are cars that were better than it. And the first place is awarded to the Land Rover Defender. The Defender is equipped with electronically controlled central and rear lockers. In low range, it drives almost like a G-Wagon in the ultimate combat mode. And after engaging the rock crawl mode, the Land Rover certainly is not inferior to the Mercedes, even without the front locker. And it is much easier to switch the Defender into full combat mode. Moreover, due to the rear locker, the Defender copes better with obstacles than its long wheelbase older brother. Therefore, a well-deserved first place. But that's not all. The Range Rover Sport also deserves first place. It's the right moment to argue that the test is fake and unfair and was staged to advertise the Range Rover Sport. But seriously, despite the lack of off-road gear, it doesn't even have a low range. The Sport coped well with all the obstacles and did it in the same mode it drives in the city or on the highway. Maximal versatility. And the Range Rover Sport has a version with a 5-liter supercharged engine and a rear locker. Such a version works wonders. For more details, watch the video battle of premium crossovers by the link in the description or right now in the upper right corner. Perhaps you disagree with my ranking. I would be glad to know your version. Be sure to write it in the comments. But don't forget that in this video, we compare the operation of all-wheel drive systems, but not the overall consumer characteristics of cars.
That's all from me. Write in the comments which car surprised you and from which one you expected more. I'm Diaz, see you in the following video.